Okay, I would like to call the regular meeting of the Board of Education to order on May 9th, 2013. First item is to review and approve the agenda. Are there any issues or questions about the agenda? No. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And as is our custom, we always allow anyone who would like to speak to the Board of Ed to come at this time, and then also at the conclusion of the meeting. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I'd like a motion to approve the consent agenda unless there are any issues.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So approved, and we'll move on to reports and recognition. Bruce is attending a concert, I believe, at Cider Mill this evening, and so he'll be here about an hour late, so he should roll in around 8 o'clock. But we won't, so I don't have a report tonight, just other than to welcome everyone and say that I think the meeting went well, town meeting went well on Tuesday evening, and thank everyone for their support. And Bruce isn't here, but we'll thank him for a fine presentation. So, over to the superintendent's report.
Good evening. Yesterday was National School Nurse Day, and I think we're very fortunate in this district to have a very committed, well-trained, and very supportive school nursing staff. The school nurses make the connection between health and education visible for our students, and they truly help keep students in school, in class, and ready to learn. I've written a letter to each of the nurses thanking them for the incredibly important service that they provide to our students and staff. So I just wanted to recognize them publicly again this year. Second item, this is the season for adjudication festivals. Julia reports that the 8th grade music students at Middlebrook School competed at an adjudication festival, Music in the Parks, at Six Flags New England in Agawam, Massachusetts last Friday. They arrived home late Friday night with many trophies. Our jazz ensemble took first place with an excellent rating. Men's choir, the Middlemen, first place, excellent rating. Concert band, first place, excellent rating. String orchestra, first place, excellent rating. Mixed choir, first place, superior rating. And I was told, Molly told me that superior is better than excellent. I was trying to make that determination. And our outstanding vocalist was Nikki Scamufo. So really want to congratulate our Middlebrook music staff and students for another a great accomplishment, and to thank Betsy DeGroff and Chip Gall for chaperoning the trip with the talented members of the Middlebrook Music Department, Janet Nobles, John Rhodes, Susan Kelly, Michael Gordon, Jenny Ginsberg, Darylyn Mannering, and Marty Mead. I really think that's another sign of the way our fine and performing arts staff really support one another. For high school people to chaperone a bunch of 8th graders speaks to their commitment to kids and music and patience. Because I've watched those groups leave, and the adrenaline level and the bags of candy and all the other things that go along with kids traveling. The high school, speaking of adjudication, had an extremely successful trip to Washington, D.C. Theirs was April 27th, and it was sponsored by the Festivals of Music and was held all day Friday at the Vienna Church in Vienna, Virginia, and at the Northern Virginia Community College. And they have professors serving as adjudicators and clinicians. In the festival, it's really a learning experience as well as a competition. The festival was attended by 5 schools from around the East Coast and total over 600 students in 26 ensembles. Of the 600, 250 were Wilton Public Schools, Wilton High School musicians. So in addition to the great behavior, outstanding behavior of the students on the trip, we had incredible support from our parents, organizer Bob Orton, and 23 parent volunteer chaperones from the Music Boosters, and terrific work by Rich Sanzo and the nursing staff really made this a very successful trip. In the vocal competition, the madrigals and the concert choir received excellent ratings. The men choir, the bottom line is their name, and the chamber singers both received superior ratings, and the chamber singers were awarded the overall vocal best vocal group with the highest score at the festival. In the orchestra, both the combined orchestra and select orchestra received superior ratings, and the select orchestra won overall string group for the highest score at the festival. In the band competition, there's kind of a theme here. In the band competition, the concert band received an excellent rating and earned the overall highest score in the single A category for intermediate high school repertoire. Wind ensemble received a superior rating and earned the overall highest score in the double A category for advanced high school repertoire. Jazz 2 received a fourth place, an excellent rating, and Jazz 1, a superior rating, won the overall highest jazz score at the festival. So if you haven't heard our Jazz 1 group, they are spectacularly good. The teachers and parents of these students could not be prouder of their accomplishments, and they really represented our community in the best possible way. So they wanted to express their appreciation to the high school staff, the administrative team at the high school, and the Board of Education for your continuing support for the arts in Wilton. We've been talking over the years about unfunded mandates, and I thought it would be important to share with you. There's an organization, it's called Connecticut's Big Six, and it's made up of organizations we belong to, like CABE and CAPS, the Superintendents Association, CONCAN, the Connecticut Business and Industry, and the Connecticut Council for Education Reform. And they issued a statement. Ms. Finkelstein's going to be working. We're going to be working on a statement about the Common Core to help translate some edu-speak for parents in a way that I think will be very helpful. Chris has done some really great work in trying to get the word out about a variety of topics. But I thought it'd be helpful just to share this information from the Big Six about what happened. The Appropriations Committee of the Connecticut General Assembly cut $37 million that was part of the reform package from the governor's proposed budget. And I think you'll see more about the Common Core standards, and you'll hear about them again tonight and in the coming weeks. They are a set of high expectations that will ensure that all students achieve specifically articulated levels of proficiency in core subjects each year, that build on a foundation of learning from one academic year to another and work toward a clear path to college or career readiness. The challenge with this is that the timing, as you know, has been fast-tracked, and that the implementation of any significant reform initiative, in our view, requires thoughtful work, support for teacher preparation, administrator preparation, and just the time to put in a curriculum. It's not something that you want to be, the old line about designing a plane while you're flying it. And I think, we believe the Big Six organization believes that this is somewhat short-sighted and is trying to urge support for this. This support that was cut out was intended for summer training for teachers on modifying classroom practices, training for supervisors on assessing teachers' alignment of the new curriculum or instructional practices, professional development and training for coaches for districts, coaches, meaning instructional coaches, a website for use by all education stakeholders, and the opportunity for practice and work with these new standards. So we've been urging the legislators to restore funding for this initiative, and we really hope that they will be listening to that in some way. We recognize that these are difficult times in Hartford, but I think that there's got to be some dawning awareness of the fact that change should be accompanied, bless you, by support for our teachers and administrators and students. There was a bit of a recognition that you may have seen about, but I thought it would be important to share publicly again. The Washington Post recognized, Wilton High School was recognized as among the most rigorous high schools in the nation. This was a rating based on one criterion, and that is the percentage of students who at least once in their high school career have taken an advanced placement or international baccalaureate exam and have passed, which means they got either a 3, 4, or 5 on the examination. The index rating that Wilton High School received was a 2.314. Sounds like pie to me. A ratio of the number of AP exams what pie is 3.1411? Just realized I was off a full digit. But that the ratio was meant that there were 2.3 exams for every senior in the class of 2012. And as the ranking came out, again, it's one criterion, and it's a way of looking at that one criterion. It was we ranked 10th out of 18 in Connecticut, but the range between 10 and 5 was infinitesimally small, so that really we were very much at the top of the state in terms of the number of students taking rigorous coursework. So we're proud, and some people here in the audience are AP teachers, and I think you've seen in our testing reports the quality of work. It's not just that this just measures how many kids took the test and did 3, 4, 5. We've reported on how many of those students really are at the 4 and 5 end of the spectrum, which I think speaks to the great work of the teachers and our students' effort. Finally, we were just talking about it briefly here before the meeting started. Each year, as you know, the Welton High School puts on some incredibly good music and dramatic productions, and I wanted to draw your attention to this year's musical, which, as you've seen the signs and seen the advertising, Les Mis, Les Mis, that will be presented 4 times next week. Thursday, May 16th at 7:30 in the Clune Center, Friday, May 17th at 8, Saturday, May 18th at 4, and Sunday, May 19th at 2. And I guarantee, we were talking about this tonight, and I know several board members were exchanging money, which was for the purpose, let the record show, of not having anything to do with votes, but having to do with the tickets that they purchase. And I'm excited to see, because I sometimes, I'll say, gee, I got to see this, and they've been out of town or otherwise committed. And this is going to be a spectacular, wonderful evening. I've talked to Chip Gall and some other people who are so excited about the hard work that the kids have put into this. And as always, the costumes will be great, the scenery will be great, the music, as you saw, very high quality, and I think you'll enjoy. So don't miss this, and we're really, really looking forward to it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Richards. And keeping with the music theme, I will orchestrate the remainder of the meeting.
Pass the baton to you.
So we're up to committee reports. Any committee reports?
I will report on Miller Driscoll. We had the first Miller Driscoll Building Committee meeting on May 1st. I think we all felt that it went very well. We have an exceptionally talented group of community members. We have someone who's formerly on the sewer commission. We have a property manager, an electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer, a
Contractor.
Mechanical engineer, a chemical engineer, an architect, and a builder.
Wow.
Those people have volunteered their time, and we are meeting on next Monday, the 13th, and our major job then will begin to develop a request for proposals for architectural and engineering firms, and to begin to develop questions to ask those that are shortlisted.
Others? We had the pension trustees and the OPEB trustees meeting, and we were given an investment report for the last quarter, and there were no changes to the allocations. And that, I believe, it's all with the committee report, so we'll move on to the advisory program. Mr. Candy.
Well, this evening we continue with a series of reports which will summarize for the Board of Education many of the key initiatives that are taking place across the district, and also will include year-end summaries. As Dr. Richards mentioned, we'll be updating the board on the implementation of our K-12 mathematics program in the coming month, as well as our K-5 literacy initiative. As you know, these were discussed at length during the budget process, so I think it'll be very valuable for the board to hear these updates. This evening, our focus will be on the high school advisory program, on the implementation of student success plans at the high school, and we'll also provide the board with an overview of our staff development program. These opportunities to be heard, I think, are most enjoyable for one reason, and that is it provides the board with the opportunity to hear from members of our faculty, K-12, pre-K-12, across the district. And I believe the board will be reminded tonight and in the sessions to come of the power of the Wilton Public Schools and its faculty. And tonight you can see that we have a collection of members of our faculty. I'll allow our building principals to introduce these folks. And I just want to acknowledge, in my role as assistant superintendent, you speak of orchestra conduction, being the conductor. I don't even have to take on that role. Basically lay out the need and then depend on an outstanding group of building administrators, instructional leaders, and members of our team to define the action plan, build the roadmap, and implement the program and report on results. So very excited tonight to report to the board on 2 initiatives and then our staff development report. So we'll start with the advisory program, and I'll turn the program over to Principal O'Donnell.
Good evening, Dr. Richards, members of the Board of Education. We've got a good team of educators to talk about our advisory program this evening, and I'll welcome Rich Sanzo, one of our assistant principals, whom you well know, and Kim Zemo, our school social worker, and Dan Pompu, of course, one of our fantastic school counselors. We've been very excited to implement this program 9 through 12 this year, involving all students and all certified staff, and it's been a good, successful first year. And we're going to talk about the program a little bit and the evaluation piece, a little bit of research, and we're going to start with something that I know will intrigue you, and it's going to be a bit of a testament from our students about the program, unfiltered, just feedback from students on the program. So we'll start with this little video clip that I think you'll find informative.
Advisory is meeting new people that I probably would never be able to meet, like in person, and getting to know them.
Advisory has taught me to be more open, especially around my peers and fellow classmates, and meeting who I didn't necessarily know before.
The best thing about advisory, I'd say, was getting shorter classes during the day at school.
The best part of advisory is meeting new people.
I feel like advisory brings everyone together. Like, they don't talk to anyone. I feel like a lot of people, they're all mixed up, so they get to just talk to people that they get to talk to.
Is that we found in advisory? Friendship and
It just worked very well across the bridge.
Oh,
You come to my office, I can show you. Try that again.
I like about advisory is meeting new people that I probably would never be able to meet, like in person, and getting to know them.
Advisory has taught me to be more open, especially around my peers and fellow classmates, and meeting who I didn't necessarily know before.
the best thing about advisory, I'd say, was getting shorter classes.
I feel like advisory brings everyone together. Like, they don't talk to anyone. Like, I feel like a lot of people, they're all mixed up, so they get to just talk to people that they get to talk to.
Is that we found in advisory? Friendship and food.
So I'd say the best thing about advisory is that it's basically this interval of time when it's like a social 13 minutes where you don't need to do any academics. And really that's sort of
Wasn't supposed to film.
you just talk about just miscellaneous things in the school year. So that's the best way.
So I think the best thing that we've done with advisory this year has been bringing people together who normally wouldn't be together. You know, it's nice to watch people. But I mean, I definitely have made some connections with people who I wouldn't expect to because of it.
The best thing about advisory is that it helps me take a break from my academic classes during the day.
My favorite memory of advisory was when we played the game Apples to Apples. I never played it before.
but it really helped me get over stress and stuff from
The
school.
value that I have found in advisory is being able to bond with my peers and get to know new people and make new friendships.
Can you turn up the volume at all?
I'd like to see different groups for next year, get to know more people from my classmates.
Next year we're going to get we should have an after-school advisory groups.
I would like to, next year for advisory, because I'm going to be a senior, I would like to maybe do some mentoring between advisory groups and sort of like give the freshmen the lowdown on it.
Alexander, we came up with our new idea for next year that we did advisory Olympics, where once a year we all went to the field and competed against other advisory classes. And that'd be great because we already have become such good friends with each other in advisory, so we come to be able to try to challenge other advisory groups and see how we come out to challenge.
I think that advisory should stay the same next year, except maybe a little less structure, because when we don't have specific things to do.
We'll change the length time of the advisory group because it's a little it seems like it's too long sometimes, but I think it should be shorter.
We decided that it'd be great if we could talk for 20 minutes instead of 13 minutes every Tuesday or Thursday. We just have to leave and we want to talk more. So. Yeah, you got a friend.
Okay, clean my office.
In advisory, I definitely found that there's some value in just this Wilton High School community as a whole, and it's been really kind of inspiring to see how many people are achieving and how many people are just awesome people.
So you get a flavor for the program and some of the students' impressions. One of the things that hopefully shines through is the idea that we're building community, certainly among students, is what you really heard there. We also certainly want to believe that there's a great bit of community building between staff and students. We all have advisory groups, and we didn't ask that specific question, but a lot of good feedback on the teachers' work. And I want to commend our staff, because all certified staff going offline twice a week and running this program, and they really bought into it and have done a great job committing to it. So we'll give you a little overview here. We've been meeting on Tuesdays and Thursdays for 13 minutes. You can see from the students' impressions that we're debating whether that length is appropriate. That's where we landed this year. Keep in mind there's some transition to and from advisory, but that's one of the things that we'll be evaluating. Among our discussion, one of the things that we find is it often seems to be too short. You have time where you get into some meaningful, rich discussion, and you're soliciting good feedback from students, and sometimes you just run out of time, so that's something that we're going to evaluate. We have had some good activity periods that have embedded in, and examples are, you had informational sessions on technology to build students' awareness, some things around registration. So we've run some activity periods and just embedded them. They run approximately 45 to 60 minutes, where the entire school goes offline, and we design a meaningful activity for all grade levels 9 through 12. So that's been part of the advisory program this year. I talked about all students and staff being involved. Rich, Kim, and Dan have done outstanding work in providing some background information, research-based in the newsletter. I know Dr. Richards has been interested in reading them throughout the year, so that advisors can really have some good information in which they can root their instruction, but also have the latitude to really design it and tailor make the advisory group and session to their particular group that's developmentally appropriate. So we've done great work providing, we think, the support for the teachers, but also recognizing we want to meet individual students' needs. So we're very happy with it in year one. A lot of work still to do, but we really commend the staff and the students. And Rich is going to talk a bit about the research base behind the advisory program and the new aspects here.
And one of the interesting things that we as a school, as an advisory committee, took a good portion of last year and even throughout this year to look at both the formal and informal literature that's out there on advisory programs. And while there's a lot out there, you really find that it's rooted in the student-teacher relationship literature. The importance of having students connected to an adult in the building, the importance of having students connected to one another. There are a variety of organizations within education that are promoting the advisory programs. One of them, which is very important to the high school, is the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. As part of their standards for accreditation, a key indicator is that schools have a program in place to ensure that adults and students are connected to one another. And an advisory program is a great way to be able to do that. But they've been promoted for a long time, even outside of the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. Back in the late 90s, the National Association of Secondary School Principals put out a reform document talking about wanting students to ensure they have a personal advocate within the school building, ensuring that they are connected to one another. Ensuring that students and staff are connected to one another. With the informal research that we did last year as part of the advisory steering committee work, one of the big things that we found is that there's a variety of programs out there. And it's important that we're able to customize our program to our school and our needs. And that's really what Dan and Kim have done through their leadership as the civic and social instructional leaders, is take all the information that we know about advisory programs, the different models that are out there in the variety of school settings, and make one that fits us, fits the Wilton High School community. And that's what they're going to talk a little bit about now.
So in terms of goals of the advisory program, the number one thing was really getting students connected with an adult in the building other than a classroom teacher. And I think we've been successful at doing that in hearing, you hear kids talk about not only adults are they connected with, but with students that they may have never had the opportunity to really talk to, and in a setting that's not competitive. And I think the idea of having, even though it's 13 minutes, but they talk about getting a break in the day to catch their breath and really talk in an environment that isn't competitive and is stress-free, and that there's really value in that. When we did the summer work to kind of develop a framework for the program, we used our civic and social expectations to really guide us in terms of the themes that you'll see on the next slide that were the themes of each month, and then the activities or discussion topics that we might give out. Bob talked a little bit about the newsletter. It was a real hard balance once we began speaking with teachers. There are a lot of teachers that are really comfortable in this setting, talking with kids outside of the academic realm, and then there's a group of teachers that were not comfortable. So what we really needed to do was provide a framework that is very structured for those who needed it, but then for those who can go on their own, just the themes or the topics were really enough to kind of jumpstart them. And I think we were able to do that through the newsletter. And then the last thing is facilitating the development and monitoring of student success plans, which you'll hear more about, but we were able to, at least in year one, identify specific grade levels and specific activities that we wanted those students to participate in that would tie into their student success plans. And one of the things that we did this year was all students worked on SMART goals and developing a goal. And something else that came out of advisory that I don't think we necessarily realized in the beginning, but the value in everybody as a community talking about the same topic, the same theme at the same time was really powerful, whether it's coming out of the activity period in a debrief session or focusing on something that may be related to a success plan or just a topic. And the themes are pretty self-explanatory. This was our focus this year. We will be looking this summer at some were more well-received than others. Some were maybe too long in terms of different topics. What we really, our work really now needs to be this summer, looking into next year, is breaking at grade levels. Senior activities and topics were a little different, but I think we have work to do in terms of each grade level having things that are more specific to them, where it was more generalized this year.
And also with these themes, because of events in the world, there was always the option to broaden and go away from those themes. And there was more than enough information and documentation in those packages for people to kind of pick and choose what they felt as advisors comfortable with, as well as knowing their own students.
Now, Kim and Dan talk a little bit about some of the next steps. We, as a steering committee, Dan, myself, Kim, and a variety of staff members and students meet each month to informally collect some feedback on the advisory program, make tweaks and adjustments. But we thought it was important as part of an ongoing evaluation process to put together a more formal survey. So we did some research and adapted surveys that have been proven to be valid and reliable. And those are being administered to all faculty and all students over the course of this month. In fact, today, because many of our seniors are going to be leaving on internships shortly, all of our senior faculty advisors and advisees were surveying. We'll be surveying our juniors, sophomores, and freshmen later this month. One of the challenges is that this program is very much has qualitative outcomes, and trying to quantify the results is a difficulty. So we've used it. We're hopeful that these instruments will give us some initial feedback around some of the outcomes, the connectedness that's been developed between students, between staff within the building, and also give us some feedback around, you saw in the video, about the time, the structure, the implementation of the advisory program, so that as we sit down this year and this summer and analyze the results, we can launch an even stronger program. But I think we've gotten a really good start this year, as Bob said. I think a huge part of that is the buy-in that we've gotten from students and the buy-in that we've gotten from staff this year. So they deserve to be commended for that.
We'll take a moment to entertain any questions you may have or any observations you want to share.
Well, just to begin, I think this is wonderful. Certainly I've been a big promoter of the mentor program, and I think this is just so essential. And the one thing I would have to say is that I think your marketing has been good. Advisory just sounds better than mentor. And so that clearly comes across with the videos. So, questions? Open it up.
How has the program been received by the staff who are now suddenly have this new added responsibility?
Well, we had to reach a decision that this was important for our school community. And I started to, plant some seeds about this is the direction that we will be going in. We really tried to not necessarily root it in the NEASC indicator, but what's important for students. And that was really why I made that comment. I mean, they really did buy into it. We did not have a lot of resistance. And I think it was really about the sense that this was important and that we could support you in the work. Kim alluded to that a little bit, that you have this resource and that you have resources from former teachers who did serve as, we don't use the mentor nomenclature as much, but those who have served before. And it became something that really was embedded and became part of the culture. It's interesting that on Tuesdays and Thursdays we basically implemented the advisory program, and then on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday the new news program, the Morning Warrior. So it became part of the culture. Teachers began to collaborate with each other and share ideas, which was important. We have a site where you can post up activities that have been effective or not so effective. And so I just, generally speaking, would commend the staff for the buy-in. And I think that, what we said was we're going to design it for Wilton High School. We're going to make a model program, and we're getting there. And we'll make it better for next year and continue to support them.
I think the other, if I can just add to that, that we're all doing it. Administrators, counselors, support staff, I think helps that it's not just a teacher add-on, that we're all in this together. So I think that's been helpful.
Following on Chris's question about how the program's been received, I think in the written report that was in our packet, there was some indication that the freshmen and sophomores were more receptive to it, and that there was a little bit of pushback from the juniors and the seniors.
I wouldn't make that general observation, but of course I had a group of seniors, So
was that a function of the differentiation, though, that Kim alluded to?
It's still the belief of the mentor.
That maybe as you move forward, that you look at some topics and as you tweak things after a first year, that you see how it plays out.
I have a junior group, and I know they're so overwhelmed junior year. Just the idea to kind of de-stress has been really helpful. And we're surprised about, we ran an attendance record not too long ago. The kids are going. I mean, I was really concerned that our juniors and seniors before lunch would be out of here. Mm-hmm. My kids are there every week. They're going. It's a very small percentage. It's not optional.
Well,
no, it's not optional. Yeah.
I think that when you take a...
There's not a big pushback. I mean, we're not.
Well, I have a senior, and I can tell you that at the beginning of the year, based on the crowd that hangs out at my house, there was a lot of them, this is so stupid. But now, great. You know, we talked about this, and you know, I think you gradually won them over.
That's what I was just going to say.
Seniors that haven't had a tough crowd.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest hurdle.
You take a group of seniors and implement something new, to Ms. Burke's point, and you might have some resistance, but I think overall, once again, you'll hear some people quite eager to go in, and you heard about the piece about slowing things down a little bit, the piece that we're slowing things down and sharing a little bit of community time, and the human element of what we do, I think, has been important for them.
I've received nothing but positive feedback from my two sons. I was wondering, so these are only groups of about 10 kids. I mean, they're very small groups.
12 or 13 for freshmen.
And now, will this same group stay together all 4 years with the same advisor?
Yes.
That's the plan.
What if there were any issues along the way? Would there be an option to switch or move, or would you just work through that? Were there any difficulties? I mean, either the mix doesn't click, or the teacher-student relationship doesn't click.
Some advisories are gelling right off the bat.
Right.
Some it's been more of a challenge that and we're helping staff work through that, and it takes time. I think by mid-year, most of the groups were starting. The freshmen, I think the freshman group took a little longer too, being new and kind of overwhelmed with the whole school and talking in small groups.
And what we've done with at least my freshman group, we've worked with some of the seniors to get free advice. Supervised free advice.
Our general approach to an issue like that would be to try to resolve it, through the measures that we have in place, not unlike, things that arise between a classroom situation. And if it was an impasse, I think we would try to do something. We don't want people being uncomfortable. There hasn't been a lot of feedback from teachers that this is an impossible group of students to work with. It just takes time to really get a little bit of traction and build that community within the small group that's working. It's very important.
Well, two things. One is I would definitely say that when my oldest, who's now a senior, he was in the freshman mentoring program, and he did form a very good bond with his teacher, who was his mentor. She was a library aide. Unfortunately, her position was cut and budget cut. And he was quite upset by that, because in addition to Mr. Pompa, it was that other adult that he could see in the hallways or whatever and take a few minutes and catch up with and talk. So I think that's a very valuable part of this, is having that other adult who's not necessarily a math teacher or whatever that you could go to. But I'm curious for Rich and Bob, that must be intimidating, I would think. I'm assigned to principal's my advisor. How did that grow over the year? That experience? Did you work with seniors? You said
I had seniors, and I had a very, very. I would say this probably about all of our students, but I had a great group of seniors, and we very quickly gelled to the point where, today was the last day that I'm going to see them all, and it was honestly, it was sad for them and for me. I'll still see them, but they were great. I attribute that to the great kids we have in the Wilton Public Schools and in our high school. They were fantastic. Rich, any observations?
And I have a group of sophomores that I've just enjoyed every single minute that I spend with them. I've been at a workshop the past couple of days, and I've just missed them because I haven't seen them. And we've gelled together, and I look forward to, as you had asked, I'm going to be spending the next 2 years with them. So to be able to see them, mature into juniors and spread their wings as seniors as they move on to graduate 2 years from now. And I love it. Personally, I miss the classroom as an administrator. So having that even more intimate connection with 12 students in the building that I wouldn't necessarily have, it's great.
I have a question, one more question. Given the horrible tragedies that took place during the past year, was there any opportunity to sort of change your schedule a little bit
We
to
timed out
talk about some of the things?
around Newtown. We talked about it.
Good.
We carried it through. That's why I said we're never really locked into the curriculum. It's a theme or a suggestion. So
that's such an important question. I think that what I was thinking as I was listening to the report, I was thinking about the fact that the connection with the adults beyond the classroom teachers you have, and particularly to have administrators and support staff, as Kim said, the Dr. Bernstein work, and we had him working with us about, what are some of the foundations for secure and safe schools, and one of them is having an environment where kids are confident and trust adults and are known and know adults, where if they see something, they say something and they feel comfortable. And having been in other districts where we tried to develop the same kind of nurturing environment, we found that some of the episodes we had, and they were pretty serious, came to our attention from kids going to an assistant principal that they knew outside, being the one who's disciplining them or the one who's, whatever. They were able to go to them and say, we have a problem. So I think that really does add to the foundations for a secure, more nurturing environment, which is hard to do in a big high school. And you heard kids talk about the factions, and to have kids who said, I would never have interacted with this person, and I think that can break down some barriers too. So I really think that was a helpful part of what I heard.
I know it's the first year and you're still working on it. My concern is always that you guys are the rock stars. I mean, and I know from the conversation at lunch, some of the kids go in and they're like, oh, I was an advisor, and they're like, oh, and the ones of Deb Marino like go on and on about these great, and some of them. So how do you make sure that all the students are connecting with an adult in the building? Because, I love the idea that administrators and the guidance counselors and all the teachers, but some teachers are better than others, and I know you're working them along, but how do you, make sure that, the children aren't, there are some students who aren't connecting with their advisor, his or her advisor,
In my view, a big piece of that will be, I think in year one, you set a model up for success. I think a big part of this now will be to what extent does the survey work inform how we either modify the program or adapt it. You saw that the students can be quite candid, and that's what we want. These are anonymous surveys, and we'll take a look at the feedback and do some summer work, and there will be modifications to it. And I think that if something were to rise to the fore during the school year, where you hear something is just not working, then we would address it, and try to either make some modifications and/or coach the staff member up differently and try to support them. But I think these surveys that are really quite good will give us some good quantitative and qualitative feedback on the program.
The surveys are rooted in two different ideas. One is around measuring social supports that students perceive to have been provided by their advisor and by students within their advisory, and that's a measure of school connectedness, how connected they are with each other. The other piece to it is looking at what has occurred within each advisory over the course of the year, and the way the surveys are set up is to be able to compare those two ideas, so to see if advisors can be supported in a different way in the coming years if they're not quite establishing the connection we'd want them to have with students.
We also have grade level advisor, like resource people to turn to that if, an advisor needs some help on an activity or what's happening in the group, that they can go to. They also can see any of us, but we have specific grade level people too. So hopefully teachers are recognizing a need if they have one.
Sounds like a very good first year.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next topic, as we segue into this, I'll make this very quick, but I think another example, I spoke earlier about the unfunded mandates, but in spite of that, I think that the work that you're going to hear about tonight from Middlebrook School, terrific work that our Middlebrook colleagues have done, and the high school, I think is work done without the support, and they didn't let that deter them, I think, as you will see now.
Well, our second report tonight does discuss and provide the board with an overview of our obligation as state mandate to implement student success plans in grades 6 through 12, starting in July of 2012. So, as Dr. Richards indicated, we've had an outstanding team of professionals at each of the schools work together, not only within the school environment, but across the middle school and high school spectrum in terms of consistency to develop and implement the initial stages of the student success plans. So tonight, we're going to ask Jory Higgins, Dean of Students at Middlebrook, to provide the point, give the board an overview of our work, and then we'll ask a representative group of faculty members from Middlebrook to report to the board on the work at the middle school, and then a group from the high school will do the same to give you their overview. I'd like to just say at the initial side of this report that this work has, I think there's been solid implementation plans put in place. There have been great accomplishments, but this work is also, because of some of the factors involved in terms of non-funded, faculty ownership, there have been some challenges along the way. So I just wanted to make that point on the front end here, and we'll be, of course, very receptive to the board's questions on this. So I'll ask Mr. Higgins if he can provide that introduction, and also, Jory, if you could introduce the members of the team who are here tonight on the SSP front. I appreciate that.
Thank you, and I thank you all for the opportunity to hopefully not confuse you and share you a little bit about yet another education anagram, SSP, and just so you can be more initiative in this field, right? But I just want to point out a couple of folks that are here with me. Some will join us at the table later, some won't. But Darren Gunn, who's a language arts teacher at Middlebrook, teaches 8th grade this year, has been a really great driving force for us at Middlebrook. Hopefully in your board packet you saw the executive summary, and Darren really had most, if not all, to do with putting that together, so you can see really just how much he had, just from that alone, how important a factor he's been in this. So just publicly, I'd like to thank Darren for all his efforts and thank him for that. Sitting next to him is Mr. Bill Girondo, who is a counselor at Middlebrook, and I think when this first started for us, one of the things that we were very concerned about was that this was going to be an initiative that fell solely, if not completely, on counselors, both at middle school and high school. And Bill's been a great partner in trying to help not only our counselors understand that it's not just on them, but also our staff understand and how we all share the responsibility throughout the whole building. And then Mr. Mike Roberto is one of our physical education teachers, and you'll hear a little bit about the Fitnessgram, which is a software program that is specifically addressing the physical development of our kids. And then from the high school, Linda Lyle is here, as you'll know her as an administrator at the high school, and you know Ms. Deb Marino as a counselor at the high school. And along with Darren, the four of us will come to the table after this PowerPoint just to go through a little more specifics about high school and middle school challenges and what the implementation looked like, and then offer an opportunity to try to answer questions, and hopefully if Mr. Gunn Darren will be with me, but Mr. Girondo and Mr. Roberto, if you ask one of those questions where I do one of these, encourage them to join the conversation. Okay. This is meant to be kind of a broad brush for you to give you an idea of where this all came from. Around about September of 2011, the superintendents in Connecticut received the rather ominous, if not now famous, circular letters from the state. And this C4 letter specifically outlined the subsection, the scary subsection 2, which was referred to in the Public Act 135. And really what it said was that from this moment on, all schools in the state of Connecticut in grades 6 through 12 will have an SSP for all students grades 6 through 12. So after the collective sucking of wind out of the room and scare, we realized, all right, what does that mean for us, and how can we attack it? And I'm proud to say, and obviously as a spokesman for us, know that I'm very proud about the way our staff did respond in terms of, maybe the initial but then a follow-up to say, all right, what do we need to do and how do we need to do it? And so as we start to look at the positives of it, when you talk about, from a student perspective, what it prepares them for, the hope is there. We're looking at post-secondary success, and specifically first with education and then into life and career. but also to keep in mind that we have to be aware that you've heard us talk about 21st century skills over and over again and in plenty of presentations in the district. But talking about what a dynamic global economy we're in, or world that we're in, I should say, and that it's very competitive. So the hope is that this will help them in that vein. And I'll explain a little more what that means. And what it provides for the students is first that opportunity to first design it on their own, because this is supposed to be student-driven. And as you can imagine, that means we have to help them along. But student-driven to really think about first and then plan for their own futures. We have to support them. We have to have those critical adults involved, but we have to give them an opportunity to first know, really truly know, what does that mean, and then understand how they're going to fit into that positive learning environment. It's really 3 core components. The state says it's 3. It's more than 3, but and I know I can count. But it's academic and career being the first 2, and they lump that last group of social, emotional, and physical development. I'll just talk a little bit about each one of them. The academic piece is really first and foremost talking about acquiring the skills, and I think it's kind of a given that that's something that we felt pretty comfortable already as a K-12 district, knowing that we were already working towards that already. So, all right, we're okay with that. And then talking about the attitudes of the individual students to be effective learners and really lifelong learners. The SSP is also meant to be and supposed to be something that we can very easily fold into this discussion, as I mentioned before, giving them the skills in the 21st century. The career development is, obviously when we're talking about middle school children, it's hard to start talking about careers, but it's at least to start to get them to start to think about it. If you think of a little bit of backwards planning, there are some middle school students who know what they want to be when they grow up, whatever that means, whenever we grow up, right? But they know what they want to be, and that means they have, if you will, an 8 or 9 year plan if they're in 6th grade, if they know that includes post-secondary education and or training. So what does that mean? If someone knows they're destined for pre-med and the like, what does that mean that their goal needs to be, okay, maybe that's 8 years out. What does that mean for 6 years out, 4 years out, 2 years out? What does that mean the sort of classes that you're going to need to start taking now to plan for later when you go into the high school to prepare yourself for that? So I've just said a lot in that last statement relative to talking to 6th graders about that, because they're probably more concerned about their soccer game this weekend more than talking about what they have to do in terms of grades and future career success. But it also allows the students to make some of those career choices, because in some respects we're exposing them to options and opportunity there as well. But hopefully it gives them that foundation for themselves to start to look that way. Now the mosh pit of social, emotional, and physical here. Really, it's something that it's great to piggyback on that last presentation of what's going on at the high school when you're talking about establishing and maintaining those positive interpersonal relationships. It certainly dovetails a little bit. I think Kim mentioned earlier how closely it can be aligned to the SSPs and how individuals are really managing their emotions and their feelings. That's certainly a big piece of what we're going on. I think when we first heard about what SSPs were, when we first reacted to the and working with Mr. Gironda saying, okay, that's not all this isn't where it lands completely and entirely, but boy, that's certainly a big piece, those first 2 bullets. But then talking about their own positive physical development and their health is a big part of it as well. You're going to hear a little bit about FitnessGram. You have it in your handouts as well. And then finally, demonstrating that appreciation of others and really being able to embrace opportunity. And it's opportunity for academic, career, and for that matter, even physical post-secondary success. Some keys to this, because a big part of it is going to be our sell job to the kids, to the students. The state says it's going to be individual. It's going to be driven by the student. That admittedly, as I said before, for the pre-med student in 6th grade, what does that look like? What does that mean? But the hope is that it's going to keep them connected to setting goals, driving the driving the program from what they understand. You know, if you have those of you that have children that have gone through middle school, how about the idea of introducing even the thought or the idea of how to set a goal, and what is a goal, and what does it look like, and how might that be addressed in something like this. But getting them to start thinking about post-secondary education and career goals is something that obviously needs to be introduced early, so that by the time they are reaching the high school, they're able to do it with a much more learned fashion, if you will, and support from adults. I mentioned before that it begins in the 6th grade and continues on. It's also important to establish that adult support team, which is going to include not only administrators and teachers, but all support staff within the building. Provides them with an organized, supportive opportunity for setting goals. I mentioned that earlier before. Exploring the education, interests, and careers. I'm reading to you, I'm sorry. And then finally, and perhaps one of the other obstacles that we'll talk a little bit about at the table is how to do that, and that is how to utilize the systems and how to be efficient within those systems. Okay. And last slide, I promise. And some of the steps that we've already gone through here in Wilton. When the state first came out with this initiative, one of the things that they made clear to us, there are some districts out there that you can go to, and you can see it already in place, and go to some staff development that they're running. And it was interesting when we first started doing this. I'm giving a little foreshadowing towards the obstacles that we overcame. They talk about a certain district being a role model, and then we'd go and observe, and they would have one aspect of the SSP in place, but not all of it. And then when we would start to ask questions, yeah, but what about, and how about this, and what do you, they really didn't have answers to that yet. So we needed to try to find what was the good that was being presented, and what was the good in those particular examples, and how could we take from that and build upon it here in Wilton. So that was a bit of a learning experience for us. But talking to them about how they got started and what they did was certainly helpful for us to start getting the juices flowing and knowing how we're going to attack this. For us at Middlebrook, introduction of Naviance was brand new. We had Naviance was new to us. We didn't know anything about it, and I know I leaned on Deb Marino quite a bit early on to try to help me understand. A few of us from the middle school went to the high school a couple of times. Got a couple of crash courses on Naviance just to understand a little bit more about it, which was also great for me as my kids are growing into the high school. So I got a little inside scoop on that. But we had some growing pains with that as well in terms of what Naviance can and what Naviance cannot do for us. And then the last piece is just really trying to align what it is that we already do. Dr. Richards, your predecessor, had a famous line that he used to repeat over and over again, and that was, "We're good, but we can be better." How can we be better? And I think you took up that mantle and have said it yourself many times. And I think it's one of the aspects to this that we've tried to take a look at is, all right, we know this mandate's in front of us. We're going to need to do it. What are the pieces that are already in place? And then how do we align them with the guidelines that are being mandated from the state? All right, so I'll invite the high school to come on up, Mr. Dunn, and we'll entertain any questions you have. And we'll also, we have a little more of a presentation for you to go through the executive summary. Did I leave anything out?
No, good job.
Okay.
Nice summary.
Let's see if we can pull out some more.
Okay, good.
Perhaps you could just, thank you very much for that. Perhaps you could just start with describing the process, how it's going to be delivered, where we are right now, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Okay. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, we're going to talk to Middlebrooks. Yep. It was last fall, 2011, that we were first introduced to it, and so it really just started with a relatively small committee of teachers, guidance counselors, administrators that would go to the state-given offered workshops throughout that year, so that we had a comfort level with what we were being asked to deliver to the entire staff. So Jory and I and Bill Gerundo and Mike Roberto and Tim Lai, who was our technology instructional leader, attended all of these workshops and just gained a familiarity, saw how some other districts are approaching it, and just started to kind of make sense of it for ourselves and how it would work here in Wilton. And so by the spring, we were able to introduce it to the staff at a very surface level and say, okay, these are the 3 components that Jory had mentioned, and kind of run through the basics of it. And then over the summer, the guidance counselors worked pretty intensely trying to find a way to take some of the goals and work it into their developmental guidance program. They meet with the students pretty regularly, 12 times of the year, and try to work in some of those goals, but also we decided to form committees within the school. With our team structure, it allowed us to have one teacher from each team meet regularly, at least once per quarter, and talk about how we could implement many of these aspects within our classrooms and make sure that the academic components are being hit. So in those meetings, we would talk about learning style inventories, having students do reflections on their learning and their own growth, set goals, and it really inspired a lot of good conversation about what the value is in reflection, what the value is in learning style inventories. And it also gave us a chance to talk about Naviance, which is that computer program the high school has been using for a while, but it has not been used at Middlebrook until this current year. And so introducing that to the staff through the committees, and then the committee members would then introduce it to the entire teams, and students got introduced to it through the guidance, developmental guidance program as well. And so that gave us a chance to kind of log some of these non-standardized scores for students. We have Power School for grades. We have RTI Studio for standardized scores, but this gave us a chance to help students start to track some things like learning style inventories and their own reflections. But it also gave us a chance to talk about FitnessGram and how that's allowing students to track their own physical growth. So that's been introduced in the phys ed classes throughout as well. I mentioned the 12 classes for life, but we also have Career Day. They've incorporated the career surveys into Naviance as well. So whereas it used to be on paper and students would kind of lose it by the end of the year, now we can see over the 3 years since it's integrated into Naviance how their interests in careers and how some of those questions change just from 6th to 8th grade. Of course, significant changes have happened in what their interests are. And so getting that into Naviance should be interesting to see how over the years that brings some new ideas to light for students. And so that committee has met 4 times. We're going to meet again before the end of the year and get a chance to wrap it all up and see what our goals are for next year and how we might continue some of this. But right now, all students have been on Naviance. All students have uploaded some work, whether it's a learning style inventory or reflections, and all teachers are familiar with that program as well and interested in these different metacognitive skills that SSP really encourages. And that's kind of where we are with Middlebrook.
Okay.
And at the high school, similar to Middlebrook, we attended quite a bit of professional development, both in the state, and we had an opportunity actually to go to Newtown High School, who has their SSP program up and running. Once we returned back to the high school, we took the components of the Student Success Plan and looked at what we already were doing, and had an opportunity to create grade level templates for not only the state but for our students. And then in the fall, we look to provide an overview of student success plans to our staff, along with an introduction to our students through the advisory program. Throughout the year, we clearly were able to introduce various components of the student success plan, such as SMART goals, personality inventories, and career interest inventories, along with the 4 activity periods by grade levels, which really focus more on the social, emotional, and physical development of the students. I think what we've learned after the first year is that we've recognized the need to embed and develop the plans in areas of the curriculum beyond our advisory program. We need to create a deeper understanding of the value and the benefits of student success plans to both our staff, our students, and our parents. And we need to continue to help teachers with their comfort level using Naviance. Some of ours are quite versed in it, and others did not have a whole lot of time on Naviance prior to this. And we need to continue to look at the time to introduce and follow through on the completion of SSPs into Naviance. I think as we move forward, we want to, again, educate our staff and students and parents about student success plans. We will look to upload student work similar to Middlebrook in the 3 areas and components of the student success plans into Naviance. And we would like to identify activities and presentations that can increase our students' awareness and ownership of the process. So at Middlebrook, you engage the students in the implementation through the 12 life classes.
The 12 life classes and in the academic classes as well.
Okay.
And the FitnessGram part is, of course, in the phys ed classes, but it's introduced through those developmental ed classes, and the career survey is done in those developmental guidance classes. And, of course, some of the concepts are discussed, but the academic components, the learning style inventories, reflections, best work samples, all of those things are ultimately, the ideal is to be discussed and uploaded through the academic classes, either through the person that happens to be on the committee, or really the team structure allows us to decide what the best class is to implement any given component.
Okay. It just seems to me that you at the high school didn't have the same opportunity to make that introduction.
Exactly.
And that it would be more difficult for you to get it up and running.
Exactly. Right. So we've used the advisory program as a beginning for us to be able to introduce various topics in the student success plans with students.
I'm a little confused. You've got the 3 components, and each component has tools that you're using. Naviance, the gym one, whatever. Do these all then flow up then to something that's titled
Naviance is
Naviance
is the filing cabinet system to be able to house the programs. And the nice part is that we worked on in Middlebrook, and we're excited that Middlebrook students are learning Naviance now. So by the time they get to us, they'll be quite versed in it.
Yeah.
And it will become just a typical day for them to work on Naviance.
So everything's going to go into Naviance?
Yes.
So all of this filters up
right.
to
Naviance becomes the electronic portfolio
Yeah,
for students.
basically the students are creating a portfolio. So it's going to change through time based on their ages and what their interests are. But at the end, hopefully, when they hit their senior year, they'll have a rich portfolio of activities. They can upload student work. They can upload artwork. They can upload music. They can upload anything. And so it really needs to be student-centered, and needs to have students be able to kind of take ownership of it and know that this is the direction I want to go in, this is where I think I want to go, and these are all the things that I've done to support that goal, that where
But
I'm
do you
going
think
to go.
they're like standardized
No.
testing?
For Middlebrook, it's different.
No,
that doesn't.
no, it's different.
Naviance, school counselors have access to the test scores and information in Naviance. It's not uploaded into the portfolio.
Okay, that was
that remains confidential.
So it's something called portfolio.
Correct.
Under the Naviance.
Right. If you can kind of visualize a filing cabinet,
right.
Each drawer has one of those components. Naviance kind of houses what students do in their work.
Do the students know it as student success plan, or what do they refer to it as?
It's introduced to them as student success plans. In fact, they have kind of a little questionnaire at the end of that first introductory lesson that the guidance counselors give them. What's the goal? What are the components? But it's not like on a weekly basis we're saying, okay, let's get out our SSP folders. We're simply, the teachers are well versed in that language, but we're not putting another acronym up for the students. We don't want to, we're trying to get them well versed in the concepts of reflection and learning style inventories, both of which would get uploaded. And to be clear, the fitnessgram is not in Naviance either. That wouldn't be uploaded into Naviance. Yeah, there are a couple of different sort of...
And we're a little different at the
three
high school.
umbrellas.
Okay.
You probably could ask a student if they know what an SSP is. The answer will be no.
Right.
But do you know what a SMART goal is? Yes. So there are components of it that they know. They don't know the terminology, and that's where we need to educate them further on that.
So it is your goal to have the students be versed in that.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
They go to Naviance and they
Yes.
pull out that portfolio. This is my success plan.
Right.
Well, I think, and that kind of highlights one of the challenges that I think we saw early on, in that, if we're going to implement something new within the district, I think ideally we'd like to phase it in.
Right.
And maybe we'd start with 6th grade and then the next year be 6th and 7th grade, et cetera. But this mandate came to us by said 6-12, go with
Do
it.
it, right.
Do what you need to do to get it in place. So it, by then, obviously, by the time the children would matriculate into the high school, they would have that language down and would have maybe a greater understanding, but it's still so brand new, I think, for everybody involved.
So you've gone through this tremendous effort, and as a member of the Meadowbrook Strategic Planning Team, and the offline conversations we've had, I know the amount of thought and the dozens and dozens and hundreds of hours, and I know what you and Mrs. Collins and training with Naviance. Are we a better district now? We've satisfied the goal. We've made Hartford happy, but are we better?
In time.
In time.
In time.
Okay.
Like right now?
Do you see a light at the end of it? Is it going to be worth it?
I think once the students are engaged in it and understand it, they'll run with it.
But like at Meadowbrook, we already were doing the career day. We just weren't plugging it into Naviance.
That's
or
right.
Naviance.
Fitness screens.
And I think for us, that's
Yeah.
that's exactly how when we calmed down and said, all right, let's get at it, was really a good understanding of a lot of those components that we're being required to now put in place. We had in place.
Right.
And I think from a personal level, one of the things that I struggled with was I was thinking it was supposed to be this one portable electronic file of sorts for every one child, and I think it was difficult to first realize, okay, I guess it could be several different things. For example, using Power School, using RTI Studio, Fitnessgram, etc., and realize that those together are really what create and make a student's SSP. But to answer your original question, I think we are very blessed in Wilton, and that we are very lucky with not only the clientele we work with, but also the resources and the professional teaching staff to know that to ask if we're better off. No, I would say probably bluntly no.
Yeah.
But if we're being politically careful to the state, we could say, yeah, it's giving us a different focus to, if nothing else, start to talk about how do you develop that desire in kids to then start to realize that they need to be a little more forward-thinking in their lifelong learning and their planning, et cetera. Like I said before, if there's a goal of 8 years out, what do you need to do in 6, 5, 4, and 2 years, et cetera? And that can't be bad.
Yeah. I think I look at it as I think we are better off, and one of the phrases that Darren used that I think is so important is this idea of metacognition, where you're really engaging students, as George has said, in thinking about thinking and thinking about their thinking. And I think that's something that we talk a lot about, and I think I've seen lots of examples in our classrooms where teachers are getting students not just to give an answer to something, but to how did you arrive at that? And I think when I heard Darren talking about metacognition, that is such a critical life skill and an intellectual skill too for kids. So I think if we're engaging them, and we've done some of this, as you said, we had career days, but to really help them think of how does all this fit together?
Make the connections.
How does it to make the connections between one of the things I love about the career day, and both the Schools Foundation has been so great at Middlebrook and the high school, is that the presenters, and I've gone to many of the workshops over the years and just kind of listened in, is that they've talked about and helped the kids try to get a handle on here's why you do some of the things you do and why some of the skills that you are learning in Middlebrook and at the high school are life skills. And I really think not every kid gets that, but I do think that there are some kids that you like to think maybe that's kind of an epiphany for them, where they can begin to see how it fits together. I think the other piece that I was so excited to hear about the portfolios. 20 years ago in education, we were talking about the idea of digital portfolio. We used to pass around folders of student work,
Binders.
7th grade to the 8th grade teachers, or binders. And the thought that we're at a point that was so expensive at that time, talking about digital portfolios that you could buy for $50 a kid per year. But to have Naviance have an capacity to help kids put together those portfolios that will give us an ability to look at kids over time, and more importantly, back to the metacognition, coming full circle, to see how they have evolved. So I think it's important.
Good.
And
Good. Stop it.
I don't mean to sound like a Pollyanna on it. But I do think that it's had some benefit.
That's good. Yeah. Last meeting, when Mrs. Anderson presented about the new evaluation plan, we asked if there was a way to quantify the amount of time and dollars that were spent. Is there any way you guys can quantify the amount of manpower hours and professional development dollars that have gone into this so far?
We haven't done that yet.
Just a lot.
And
a lot of time that needs to have.
And the upgrades.
I think each school has had a cohort that's taken the yeoman's share of the planning and searching and training, and then bringing it back to the district for our respective buildings. So it's probably disparate in terms of, between and among the staff, who's done what. But in that respect, it's certainly a lot for, I know, the folks at the high school and middle school who are on that lead team.
And how is Hartford now following up on this?
Well,
it is. Do you need to report back to them in a certain way? And if there's not a set, this is the SSP.
There's no SSP.
There's not. We were asked to develop templates by grade level and submit them by July 1st. They didn't want them. They didn't ask for them. No, there's no follow-up at this time that I've experienced with Hartford.
They're there. They're ready.
So you created some sort of
grade level templates by each core area of the student success plan for their proposal and their acceptance.
And we don't know if they've read them.
No, they don't have them. They didn't want them. I was told not to send them.
Yeah.
They don't have. There's no one to
But
kind of gather
no one there.
recommendations.
Are there any electronic files like the learning styles that can be made available to the teachers, much as RTI Studio is, to help the teacher better understand the student?
Teachers have access to the students' files. So once a student's taken that, which every team's kind of done it at a different point in the year, but teachers can then enter Naviance and take a look at it. And really, it's given us an opportunity to talk with the kids about those learning style markers and how might this benefit you in the classroom. What assignments might you choose to take on that'll give you a chance to either highlight your strengths or build upon your weaknesses. And it's just so it's opened that door to have those kinds of conversations with the kids also, which has been pretty helpful.
Now, it used to be that you didn't get your password to Naviance until you were a sophomore. Parents didn't get passwords. So that's changed now, or is there still a component of Naviance that you don't get until you're a sophomore?
My understanding is that during the release of the first report card, we then send out our Naviance passwords.
Sophomore year.
Freshman year.
No.
Freshman year. That may change now, as well. Now that we're introduced and we're here, it may be. I'm not.
Now sixth graders are on Naviance.
Sixth, 7th, 8th. I'm not sure their passwords.
Exactly. That's my point.
No, it looks very different for a sixth grader.
It looks different for a sixth grader than it does for a freshman. Okay.
Right. And I think that's one of our challenges and learning curves moving forward is, how can what we do with the middle school help support what the high school is trying to do as well.
Any other questions? I apologize, I came in late. Could you give me just a summary in 3 bullet points on why the town cares about this? Just let it know.
Well, I guess we could start with the mandate from the circular letter in
Okay,
September of.
What's in it for the kids? Yeah.
What's in it for the kids, I think, is really an introspective look at how they're going to plan moving forward and give them an opportunity to not only be reflective, but also know that there are supports in place for them to, as they're reflecting and working on career paths and post-secondary education, et cetera, that they've got supports in place to try to help them.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bill, thank you for appreciating while I was out
He was
listening to...
orchestrating.
Well,
You'll have to watch the tape to understand that. There's a music theme here tonight.
Well, thank you, because that's where I was, 4th grade concert. There we go. We now move on to the district staff development report presented by Mr. Ganny and Dr. Russell.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as our annual custom this evening, we'll be presenting a brief overview of the work that we've done during the year to move our curriculum instructional programs forward in terms of professional development. I think it's important to recognize that the work around professional development is indeed grounded in our strategic plan. The extent to which we acknowledge we have an outstanding faculty and staff here in our district is important, but on the other hand, we're always trying to provide opportunities for our staff to move forward in their growth and their learning. We're trying to do that in a systemic and a personalized way, and obviously similar to what we're trying to do with students around reflection of practice and developing goals around how to improve in learning. We're trying to do the same with our staff, so it's self-directed in that way. It's been an important initiative in the district this year to move toward more collaborative, job-embedded opportunities for professional development. I think the best way to portray this would be similar to what you find in a teaching hospital, where we're really looking to create a clinical approach to the work around training, where teachers are working in teams to reflect on their practice, to look at exemplar work, and to provide opportunities for teachers to work as critical friends to help grow their work. We think we have a good story to tell about that tonight. And then, of course, we're still taking advantage of the more traditional professional development opportunities that you might find in an after-school workshop or attendance at a professional development conference. The extent to which we will summarize our work today, I think it's important to just briefly describe the important work that's going on in our district around what we teach, the how we assess student learning, and the extent to which we put in opportunities to help our professionals grow in their practice. So we talked earlier tonight about the work around the Common Core and the extent to which we are, through an extensive array of opportunities, working extremely hard to align our curriculum to the Common Core. The extent to which part of that has been the implementation of the Math and Focus program in grades K and 3 through 8. As the board may recall, the move to that program was quite strategic in that the Math and Focus program is over 90% aligned with the Common Core. Of course, taking that step has required a great deal of professional development. We also have been heavily involved in a focus on literacy, particularly at the K-5 level. And we'll talk to you tonight about some of the professional development training we've done in that area. Moving beyond the what we teach, the how we teach has been a focus on what we describe as the vision of teaching and learning in the Wilton Public Schools. And we'll be providing an overview of the board of that work to the board in 2 weeks. And that, again, is a focus on trying to develop strong 21st century learning designs in our classrooms. A lot of focus continues on what is a great challenge in our professional work, which is assessment of student learning, implementing the state-mandated SRBI program, working in instructional data teams, understanding of RTI Studio, and then, of course, our consistent effort to engage in continuous improvement through the accreditation process in New England Association of Schools and Colleges, which Principal O'Donnell mentioned earlier, and our continued involvement in the Tri-State Consortium. So, again, it's Dr. Richards often hears me talk about initiative fatigue in terms of the work that we're doing, a great deal of which is mandated. But that said, if you really try to just categorize the work around the what we teach, the how we teach, and how we assess the work, it can cast a nice umbrella around that and paint a picture of opportunities to create an integrated and understandable approach to our work system-wide. Now, I would like to acknowledge the work, once again, of our leadership teams in each of the schools who do a tremendous amount of time and effort in developing professional development programs. I think our teachers benefit a great deal from that time and effort. Certainly the principals at each school. And then also want to acknowledge the work of Dr. Martha Russell, who is our instructional leader for staff development. Tonight, Martha will provide you with an overview of some of the key elements of the professional development work that's taken place this year, which you have received in the comprehensive report, which I know you have read in its entirety and in great detail. Hopefully you have seen what I know just personally. When I sit down this time of year, I have an opportunity. I have a pretty good idea of what goes on in our schools. I hope the board would appreciate that I have that sense of things. But when you actually read And even in my, what I'm trying to say is in my role, where I have a good sense of things, and I read these reports about what has happened in our building level, it should be reassuring to the board the amount of energy, time, and effort and investment that goes in to our R&D, the work that we do to improve our practice to support student learning. So, Martha, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you could take the board. Okay. I've been reminded by Dr. Russell that I have one more piece to add to this one. Not in enough depth. You know, I think it's interesting how often the staff members that I work with point out what I need to do, you know, at a higher level of practice. Just very quickly, again, we're going to present this to the board in 2 weeks, but a great deal of our professional development energy at the district level has been focused on the vision of teaching and learning. And we have set forth a 3-year plan to help develop our ability as teachers to implement practices in our classrooms that foster higher level thinking, higher order thinking around creativity, innovation, in a spirit of collaboration, developing research and informational literacy skills in our students, critical thinking, problem solving, etc. And interestingly, more awareness of the world around us and citizenship. This year our focus has been on promoting a shared understanding of the language. You'll see when we present this to the board that the description of these higher level thinking skills it can be quite organic and also could mean different things to different people. So it's really important that we have shared agreements amongst our teachers about when we talk about creative thinking, what does that mean? What does that look like in the classroom? That's been a real focus this year. And we have been, I think, increasingly, as we've done our curriculum mapping, been able to tie a great deal of the work to existing learning experiences in our classroom, which is actually showing up in the maps. We've committed to a tri-state visit in the spring of 2014, where we will spend the coming year involved in a self-study. We will be looking for evidence of exemplary practice around the integration of 21st century learning into our curriculum, and we'll invite a team of critical friends to come and visit our schools next spring to take a look at how well we're doing that. And what will be interesting about that, the board may recall that our tri-state visits up until this point have been content area focused. We've had focused visits that have looked at our science program, our social studies program, our English language arts program. Here you're going to have a K-12 review of this practice, so it will influence all teachers in the district, which will be very interesting. The one thing I do want to say is you talk about the influence of state mandates on our practice. This work, to a large extent, stalled this year. I'll just be open and honest about that because of the commitment around trying to prepare our faculty to be ready for the ambitious timeline of the state evaluation plan and state evaluation and support plan. So we've had to commit time to help implement that program that has taken a bit of the energy away from this. That's been a bit frustrating. But that said, the work around the PD as it relates to the evaluation plan is grounded in good teaching and learning practice. So there's a great deal of connection, and I think that it would be a bit counterintuitive to think that the work around the teaching and learning practice has slowed dramatically what we're trying to accomplish here, but it has been a factor. How about now? Okay. There we go.
I really appreciate the opportunity to come here tonight, and I thank both the Board of Education and Dr. Gary Richards because it's really exciting to be here, to be able to highlight all the really exciting staff development that took place this year, the 2012-2013 year. And there were really quite a wide range of staff development opportunities, both in context, content, and process, to really build staff expertise in terms of teaching and learning. So in addition to the staff development programs that took place the 4 days that are traditionally allotted for staff development, there were many opportunities for very rich building-based collaborations on both instruction, curriculum, and assessment. And in addition to that, there were many off-site staff development opportunities. There were about 275, to be quite honest. And so many staff members were able to go out of the district and approach learning in their areas of expertise in terms of fine-tuning. And just some of the places or some of the staff development that took place had to do with Common Core state standards, team, lots of opportunities for meetings and conferences. In addition to those opportunities, we really want to thank the Wilton Education. Oops, I went forward.
You went back. You went back. Forward.
One more.
Okay. We really want to thank the Wilton Education Foundation Institute for their wonderful financial support to allow, and this year it was close to 30 teachers, to go off campus in the summer. And many of those places included Columbia Teachers College, Taft Educational Center, the CES. And so what a valuable opportunity for those 30 teachers to be able to do this in the summer. Well, our year begins on opening day, August 22nd, and we were very fortunate this year to have Mr. Alan November as a keynote speaker. He's an international leader in educational technology, and he came and spoke to not only our staff, but the Weston staff, which was really, I think this was the first time we've done this, as far as getting together teachers from 2 districts to approach staff development. And he talked to the staff about increasing the responsibility of learners in terms of being communicators, collaborators, innovators, and problem solving. It was very well received by the Wilton and Weston staff members. And actually, after his presentation, the instructional leaders in technology and the library and media specialists got a chance to sit down with him for an informal follow-up discussion. So that was really special. Also, our assistant superintendent, Tim Canty, as well as the technology instructional leaders, were able to attend 4 sessions of the November Learning Institute, where they were able to discuss and plan innovative curriculum that's based on his book, which is called Who Owns the Learning? And there's a little bit more to the title, but you get the gist of it. So this was a valuable learning experience for our staff, and it really meshed well with the vision of teaching and learning. Now, I want to talk about next the K-5 literacy initiative, as well as the Math in Focus adoption, the adoption of the Math in Focus program. And as you very well know, Miller Driscoll and Cider Mill have for some time been using the lab site training model, wherein a teacher will volunteer a classroom of students so that a demonstration lesson can be held in that particular classroom for the students, followed by rich discussion of the content. Well, this year, Miller Driscoll and Cider Mill were very lucky to have author and consultant Jennifer Saravallo come to help them with the Reader's Workshop approach. And the way these training sessions were set up were based on the coaching model, where a demonstration lesson is given to students, but that's sandwiched in between a pre-conference session, which in which she talks about what she's going to do and why and what to look out for, and a post-conference session to kind of debrief. And I was able to attend part of one of these, and I will attest to the value and richness of this type of staff development experience. I want to show you, as a matter of fact, a brief video clip where Gina Dignon talks about this K-5 literacy initiative. And she is, as you know, reading specialist in language arts, IL.
Hi, I'm Gina Dignan. I'm the language arts resource teacher at Cider Mill School, and I've been coordinating our professional development this year with Jennifer Saraballo for grades 2 through 5. And I just wanted to let you know why this professional development has worked really well this year. First of all, we are working with an expert in the field of reading workshop. Jennifer is the author of several books, and she's also a former staff developer at Teachers College. And the second reason that this model has been working this year is that Jen has explicitly modeled what Reader's Workshop should look like and sound like in a classroom. And once Jennifer modeled that, teachers were then able to pick a focus area, either the mini lesson or conferring, and then receive feedback on both the method and content within those two areas. So overall, the feedback has been really positive. Because it's been a very meaningful type of professional development where the learning has really landed in the classroom.
So now I move on to the Math in Focus initiative. What I want to emphasize here is that trainers from Math in Focus were brought in to help teachers become familiar with the instructional strategies of the program. And the same sort of coaching model where there's a demonstration lesson which is sandwiched in between the pre and post conference. And the staff development started actually last year in June in terms of giving grades K and 3 through 8 instructional strategies with regard to the program. And teachers were very, very lucky to have follow-up training in specific areas, and also training that targeted the needs of each of the schools at 3 different times, October, November, and February. And once again, this is a valuable time for collaboration, and it's a different kind of experience when you compare it to a workshop where you learn strategies in the workshop and you go back to your classroom and you try to figure out how am I going to implement these strategies in my classroom. Well, in this type of approach, these strategies are modeled with the students in the classroom. And grade 1 and 2 teachers will have the opportunity to begin their training in May of 2013. And now I want to show you a little clip about the Math in Focus training by Kate Stalford, 5th grade teacher and math instructional leader.
Hello, I'm Kate Stalford, math instructional leader for grades 3, 4, and 5 at Cider Mill School. I'd like to give you a brief overview of the professional development and training that we provided over the past year to support our teachers and staff as we implemented our new Math in Focus program. Beginning last summer, every one of our 45 classroom teachers and most of our special education teachers participated in 4 complete interactive seminars delivered here on site by expert trainers from Math in Focus. Our first session, which took place last June, was designed to familiarize teachers with the philosophy, structure, and components of the program. This introduction provided the foundation that enabled us to deliver the program successfully in the classroom when the new school year began. As we progressed, our training became more targeted, addressing specific topics such as bar modeling, calendar math, and flexible assessment. In addition to relying on our outside training, We developed in-house experts for each house and grade level to provide coaching and guidance for teachers on a daily basis. These 12 experts spent many additional days last summer learning and collaborating together so that they would be valuable resources for their respective teams. They continued to work diligently throughout the year as the growing comfort with the program in our building caused our needs to evolve. The quality of the instruction provided by the Math and Focus staff was excellent. They recognized our needs and responded with training that was appropriate in each and every session. Our teachers have felt very supported, and they feel that our first year with the program was very successful. Most importantly, we all feel that our students have benefited tremendously from our new program, and that a major factor in this success was the solid foundational training that we teachers received.
This is exciting work, right? This is very exciting work. And if you talk to the teachers that were involved in the training, they really appreciated this coaching model, and they really appreciated the follow-up to help hone their skills in the process. Now, in terms of the next thing I want to talk about is the Connecticut State Evaluation Plan training on February 4th. Esther Bobowick from CES put the training together, and she brought several consultants from CES who fanned out to each of these schools on February 4th in order to provide teachers and administrators with training to implement the Connecticut State Evaluation Plan. And you might gather from this that our PD really needs to be an integral part of this whole process of implementation. Now, I'm going to touch very briefly, and it really doesn't do justice to the building-based staff development. It doesn't even scratch the surface. As Tim mentioned, you really need to read those reports because so much valuable and rich staff development took place at each of the 4 buildings. And I'm only highlighting just a few of them. So, in terms of professional development initiatives, all 4 buildings targeted their PD initiatives by the Wilton Public Schools Strategic Plan, Common Core State Standards, Vision of Teaching and Learning, and Assessment. So that was across the board. And across the board also, at each school were collaborative groups, teams, to talk about curriculum, instruction, assessment, examples being the teaching and learning seminars at the high school, the study groups at the middle school, which were organized by teams. All schools also found school climate to be a really important area of focus. I just want to mention the full-day kindergarten program also. During the course of the whole year, there were collaborative discussions amongst the teachers in the district, as well as with teachers in other schools on site visits in terms of implementation of a full-day kindergarten program. And actually, this month, a consultant, Ginny Lockwood, is coming to help Miller Driscoll implement this full-day kindergarten program. You've already heard a lot about the student success plan, so I won't dwell on that. But I do want to talk about, or just mention, the many interdisciplinary projects planned in terms of visible thinking as a part of Harvard's Project Zero Teaching for Understanding that took place at Middlebrook. In terms of special education, I'm mentioning there were many more opportunities, but training in terms of SRBI, IP Direct, RTI Studio, and also in terms of learning strategies as support for students with special needs. That was a big focus as well. Matt Hepfer is going to talk about the technology training in more detail in a couple of weeks, but I'll mention that there was a lot of training going on with regard to smart boards, Adline, iPads, which are slowly integrating into our repertoire of technology, Naviance and Google Docs. And last and definitely not least, a lot of training went on with regard to team for new teachers and their mentors. So right now I'm going to turn the planning part over to Tim Canty.
Thanks, Mark. Just before I talk about the transition to next year's professional development, I wanted to follow up and acknowledge the work that Jane Anderson has done to help contribute to the staff development around the state evaluation plan. Jane actually had the pleasant opportunity of visiting each of our 4 schools and providing each of those faculty members with an overview of the plan, and then has worked extensively with the senior leadership team, and as early as this afternoon met with the Central Curriculum Council to provide updates to that team on how the plan is evolving. So Jane's done wonderful work in that regard. Also want to acknowledge that Matt Heffer has done outstanding work, as you know, in leading the technology training, was also a part of our work on the Technology Institute with Al in November. So Matt will continue to apply those principles as he moves forward with his instructional leadership team. So just wanted to reassure the board that I'll be working very hard in the coming month and a half to help transition our staff development work to my successor. We'll be continuing to examine the context, content, and process around staff development in our district. We certainly will need to focus a great deal of energy on Common Core implementation. Even as recently as last month, we're getting guidance from the state that 2014 assessments may shift to greater alignment with the Common Core, which is coming as a bit of a curveball, I must say, but we'll be responsive. And we worked with our Curriculum Council team today to help with that. We do have the obligation to follow up on the implementation of the Math and Focus program, which next year will be fully implemented in grades K through 6, selected courses in grades 7 and 8. And in fact, we'll be reporting to the Board of Education in 2 weeks on the K-12 mathematics program. So any follow-up questions tonight, be reminded that that's coming, as well as a report to the board in June on the K-5 literacy initiative. Vision of teaching and learning, hopefully the centerpiece through a tri-state visit, and the state evaluation plan, of course, which will be a big focus of our work. So in any event, I think it's been a highly successful professional development year. Once again, I want to extend my gratitude to the building principals for all the work that they do with their leadership team in overseeing professional development. Again, the work of Dr. Russell as district staff development, and of course the work of our cabinet level administrators, Jane Anderson, Ken Post, Ann Paul, Matt Heffer. I think I got us all. Right? All that work that goes on, and of course our superintendent. I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves that Gary is indeed our instructional leader. He sets the guy, while he's getting our budgets passed, he's also pulling me in to talk about professional development and instructional leadership. So we are also thankful to Gary for his work. So Martha and I will be happy to take any questions that the board may have.
Great, thank you. I'll start on the left. You queued up some questions?
I have one.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Russell. I found it very interesting, the lab site training model, where the teachers go to a pre-workshop and they see an in-classroom modeling and then have some follow-up, if I understood that correctly. When and how does that take place? Like that in-classroom modeling, could that be done on any typical school day, or is that done on a professional development day and you call students in?
It has to be planned on a particular school day.
So it's during a
so it's quite a bit of finagling in
Yeah.
terms of substitutes, but it's such a valuable experience for the teachers. It's well worth the work of putting it into place.
We have funding in place, actually, for release time for our teachers. And this is always a difficult question, trying to weigh the cost-benefit of pulling teachers out of their classrooms for this type of embedded experience around professional learning. But we have found it to be, the value added, I think, has been quite remarkable, where teachers, through the work of the instructional leadership teams, get together, and as Martha described, they
They pre-brief on a particular lesson. They go in and they watch their colleagues teach. They come back and debrief, usually on a very targeted instructional element. And as a result, your ambitious hope is that that work extends to the work of all those teachers as they move forward. And then when you add the work of the consultancy around that, where you have highly trained outside professionals come in and orchestrate that work as well. Jennifer Saravallo, if the board ever has a chance next year to watch her work, she is amazing in her ability to really fashion adult learning opportunities. And even in our most reticent teachers, she has an ability to bring those teachers into the fold and help reassure them and help grow their skills. So that extra element, Ginny Lockwood and Jennifer Saravallo's work, and then the math and focus trainers, it's really been valuable learning experiences, professional learning experiences for our teachers.
Okay, any questions?
What would you do next if you had sufficient funding?
Well, it's important for the board to recognize that we as a result of the reductions in our budget, we did have to reduce our professional development budget. The impact of that will be significant in that because of the need to fund training for the state evaluation plan, monies that originally may have gone beyond that to provide follow-up training in math and focus and other initiatives in the district, that money has evaporated. So we're going to have to be creative around using in-house talent as probably our primary response to that for training. We're going to have to, I think, look to the spirit of your question increasingly at grant opportunities, if they exist, to try to fund some of these professional development opportunities. Again, we rely on the contributions of the Wilton Education Foundation as a helpful tool in that regard.
I think leveraging with other districts, as Martha mentioned.
That's been interestingly,
can do that.
Many Connecticut districts are adopting math and focus as well. So that experience gives us a chance to cross-fertilize with other districts. But I think we made decisions around reductions in professional development that will be of impact, but we think we have enough funding available to us that we can keep things moving forward next year. Did I answer the spirit of your question? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the strategic plan, you can really see it throughout the advisories and the student plans. But as a result of the staff development this year, is there anything that is going to be incorporated from what you've learned into the strategic plan that I think you're going to be presenting in 2 to 3 weeks?
I think you're not going to see significant shifts in those strategic plan elements that relate to professional development because it worked. The language that I described at the beginning of the presentation that talks about systemic, job-embedded, inquiry-based, personalized learning experience, I think has established the core around professional development practice that can be most meaningful for the professional learning of our teachers. The one element that will, I think, create, to the spirit of your question, Mr. Bray, more focus and will in the plan update be placed with greater emphasis is that the state evaluation plan, just because of the nature of the way it's organized, as you may recall through Jane Anderson's presentation, speaks to the issue of goal development with our teacher and enhanced personalized professional development opportunities. So the updated strategic plan will speak to a point of emphasis around making sure that we systemize our approach so that teachers can develop meaningful learning opportunities that are unique to their professional growth. We need to look at strategies around how to best go about doing that beyond what we've described tonight. For the example, the evolution of online learning opportunities through our K-12 Simple Solutions and Technology, or a recent pilot program we're looking at called PD in Focus, which allows teachers to go in and view training videos that are specific to their needs in their classroom. So that's probably the one big thing that's coming is greater emphasis on personalized learning plans with our teachers, not just the en masse, let's go to the faculty-wide workshop at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. Not that that's a bad thing, but that's what's going to be really shifting.
Actually, that leads into one of my questions, personalized learning. So I was wondering, you talk about the leadership team developing professional development, and I was curious about what room is there for an individual teacher who's not in a leadership position to develop, or come up with an idea of something that can be pursued through professional development? Is there such a dialogue going on?
That the newly implemented evaluation plan mandates that.
Okay.
As teachers develop their goals for professional growth in a specific school year, there's an obligation to also look at the professional learning plan that they will need to develop to help effectuate the outcomes related to those goals. So the challenge will be to try to take that learning opportunity that a teacher may define that's unique to them, and as a district and as a building leadership team, what kind of opportunities can we provide that teacher beyond what they may be able to offer in that regard through their own personal learning experiences? How do we respond to these goals that will be coming our way? We already recognize, and we're going to be meeting next Tuesday to talk about the extent to which our district staff development committee is going to have to shift its work to be more of a vetting group that will be looking at the personalized learning goals of teachers to see if indeed there's overlap and we can find efficiencies and offer opportunities that are entirely based on what we're getting from them around their needs. So that would be an example of how we need to be responsive.
And also, are there examples of, we all sat through Ellen November's presentation in the beginning of the year, but of teachers leaving that presentation and what they did in their classroom?
Well, I can, Matt may want to jump in, but the most obvious piece for me has been the work of our technology instructional leaders and the library media specialists and some of the takeaways that I have seen them directly implement in their classrooms. The extent to which the conversations that Mr. November provided to us in our keynote last year led to further opportunities for teachers to implement those practices in their classrooms, I think we're probably more of an outgrowth of the wide range of technology-related learning experiences that were in place. So there's, I think, whether to say that the November presentation had a direct impact in providing those opportunities is one thing, but I think the better play on that is that there was an indirect impact. Teachers may have focused more on some of the other technology-related professional development opportunities that were available to them, and then hopefully that landed in their classrooms. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I would add that I think where I see the impact of the instructional leaders on sort of a small level with their teams locally in their buildings, I do see that my hope is that as we prepare for the tri-state visit that will be coming in the spring, you'll actually see a lot more of this emerge. I've seen a lot of this type of work, particularly at Middlebrook. I've spent a lot of time there over the past few years. So a lot of things that they already do, project-based learning, but maybe having a new twist on it. And I think if you saw the Fall Tech report, you saw a flavor of how you can take something you've always done, teach grammar, add a little different component to giving students a little more ownership of that. I think as we prepare for the tri-state visit, I'm looking forward to seeing what's going on because my sense is that there's more of it going on than we're all aware of, but it's in pockets. And maybe we'll get some of that feedback from tri-state about how we can take those pockets and systemize them a little bit better.
I saw an example when Matt and Tim and I believe Rich Sanzo met with the Let's Talk, with the library media specialists and the Tech ILs. And I saw one thing, because remember, Alan November kept talking about the role of research and what kinds of research is really meaningful as opposed to the encyclopedia reports that some of us did years ago. And I thought we saw a real synergy and excitement from the library media specialists. And with your background as a library media specialist, I think you would have loved the conversation, and I talked about it at our last meeting, of really wanting to partner more and recognizing the evolution of library media centers in a digital age. So I thought that was a real direct example of growth and real energy that I think will yield some great results.
Chris?
I just want a concluding comment, just to re-emphasize that we will be talking more in depth about technology-related professional development in 2 weeks. And also, I don't want to minimize in any way the work that Ann Paul has led in special education, which typically we address in her year-end report, which will be coming in June.
And the capacity building there is phenomenal.
Right.
I want to leave you with a thought, which is professional development really is our research and development arm of this organization that we're running. It's critically important. You may consider doing more advanced education of the community prior to each professional development day to let them know what the teachers will be doing, and then follow up after that to let them know what's been done. I think that'll help drive support for the programs and make people think twice before they cut a budget and force us to take those numbers out. The other piece is I was excited to hear more and more effort towards implementing 21st century teaching skills and delivering professional development to those who will be delivering the same types of skills to students. We're learning that kids need to learn differently. Well, our teachers need to learn differently as well.
Absolutely.
So the more you can tie that back, the better. And who knows, maybe someday professional development days will just be absorbed into the regular class. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We now move on to a gift to Cider Mill School. It's being presented by Dr. Richards and Mrs. Rico.
We talked about earlier tonight. Martha thanked the foundation for its generous gift in professional development. As you know, I've had some conversations with the leadership of the foundation, and that gift will be forthcoming this year. Another great partner that we have, obviously, and many of you have over the years, have been very involved as presidents and council presidents around this table. We have a very rich and deep PTA background, but Jenny's here tonight to talk about what her PTA is doing that will leverage the technology efforts and instructional efforts that we've talked about tonight and that Matt will be talking about next week. So welcome, Jenny.
Thank you, and I'm very pleased to be here before the board with something that is very near and dear to our hearts, a gift from the PTA of $20,532 for another iPad cart. We talked about how are we going to integrate this. Gary was just talking about the Library Media Center and the people being very excited. We have one for one side of the building, but we didn't have for the other, so it was sharing back and forth. So now this will, with the acceptance of this gift, if you choose to do that for us generously, we would be able to have equal opportunity for each side of our building to hopefully be able to do more of that research where teachers can have more children on task at the same time doing research where children are highly, highly motivated. It's amusing to go in and see how amazing it is, how it just captures the children when they are using these iPads. They are just, we're the immigrants, and I thought I was pretty good at technology years ago when we started, but these kids are amazing with it, and for them to be able to get that research, it saves time. It can be at their own levels, so it's a wonderful tool. So
that's wonderful. Can we have a motion to accept the gift?
Any questions? Accept it with gratitude.
Wonderful. Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you. As far as future business and announcements, the timeline is on the website. Our next meeting is in this room on May 23rd at 7 p.m. And as we do at the beginning of every meeting, and the end of every meeting, we look for comments from the public. Seeing none, I'd like to remind everybody that they can always reach us at the Board of Ed email alias. I want to remind everybody that they do need to get out and vote this Saturday. Town vote is at
8 o'clock at the Clune Center, 8 till 6 p.m.
Great.
And we've sent, a robocall will be arriving tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock after the dinner hour, reminding people. And we will be tweeting, and you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and like us.
Instagram too. Have a motion to adjourn. All in favor?